In our last episode, we infiltrated the Raider headquarters at the Pleasant Valley Ski Resort. The Raiders are long dead, but they left for us a trail of evidence that told us exactly how they became organized and finally defeated the Order of Mysteries after losing to them for all those years. We learned that a Raider named Brody was a new member of the Cutthroat Raiders at Pleasant Valley, and in an attempt to ingratiate himself with Raider boss David Thorpe, he made big promises of being able to kill all of the Mistresses of Mystery. To do so, he developed a relationship with the Mistress of Mystery, and somehow convinced her to hand over a copy of Kryptos, using one of the 2 remaining siphon holotapes from Sugar Grove. With a copy of Kryptos at Pleasant Valley, the Raiders were able to know exactly where each Mistress of Mystery was, and track them down to kill them one by one. But then something happened. They no longer had to kill the Mistresses of Mystery. David Thorpe described that event as being rather anticlimactic. But then he said at least it saved them the trouble, and then we learned the name of the Mistress of Mystery who betrayed her own order. It was none other than Olivia Rivers. Shannon Rivers' daughter betrayed her own mother and her own adopted sisters. But why? Was it really just about needing more attention from Mommy? Is it really that simple? And what was this event that saved the Raiders the trouble of killing the Mistresses of Mystery themselves? To find out, we have to head back to Riverside Manor. Now that we have Olivia Rivers' login credentials, we can head back to Kryptos and log into her account. She was one of the few Mistresses of Mystery who had the authority to grant access to the head mistress's office. And so, once inside her account, we can navigate to Administrative Actions, then scroll all the way down to Authorize Access. Then we can choose to authorize access to the head mistress's office, and then we need to choose a Mistress of Mystery to give this access to. We will, of course, scroll all the way to the bottom to grant access to our own user account, the unknown user. Now that we have full access, we can turn around and use the hand scanner to enter the head mistress's office. Remember when Shannon Rivers posted the Pleasant Valley Ski Resort job to the mission board, she said she would meet whomever completed that mission here in her office. Heading inside, we can use her daughter's login credentials to access her terminal. The first note is from Olivia. That wasn't how this was supposed to go at all. 2 months ago, I copied Kryptos, handed it over to the Raiders. Rachel finally caught on. She was telling Eve when I came in tonight. At that point, well, it was them or me. So I killed them. I killed them all. It's finally over. I'm going to burn the Order, the Manor, everything. Burn it all to the ground. If you get this, if you want to see me again, meet me at our special place on my birthday. You still owe me that trip. Olivia. The Raiders didn't have to attack Riverside Manor. They didn't have to track down the Mistresses of Mystery one by one, because Olivia Rivers by herself came back here, personally killed all remaining Mistresses of Mystery, and then tried to burn the manor. That explains the burn damage we found in some of the manor, which appeared to have started in Olivia's guest house. That room had the most burn damage. Did Shannon Rivers meet her daughter again at their special place? What was their special place? And why does Olivia think that Shannon owes her a trip? In the next one, we can read Shannon Rivers' personal journal. Volume 18, Data Corruption Detected. Out of 487 files in this directory, only 12 are recovered successfully. These go all the way back to 2082. We read her personal journal entries from before the war in the terminal we found in her study on the top floor in the manor. Looks like her newer files were moved down here. On August 2nd, 2082, no major incidents this week. There have been surprisingly few brigands in the area this summer, although the responders' radio chatter says the more organized gangs control the roads through the mountains now. This, I think, is a reference to David Thorpe's recent acquisition of the Cutthroat Gang. He deposed the former leaders, Margie and Harland, and began to better organize the Raiders, treating the Raiders like a sales team, giving each member weekly caps targets to acquire, and punishing with death those who didn't meet the target goal. And it was David who placed checkpoints on roads in their territory. Training has been going well. I've begun sending the older girls out on supply and data collection runs in pairs. For now, I'm keeping the more dangerous missions to myself, but they're at the point where they can handle themselves if they have to. On December 25th, 2082, they got the dam. We heard the explosion a little after midnight. There was no warning, nothing to be done. Charleston has been wiped out. It's worse than the bombs. The responders are doing what they can, but this is beyond them, beyond anyone. The raiders have already melted back into the mountains. They're a much bigger threat than anyone had realized. This is a much bigger reference to something that has been hinted at in the lore so far, that raiders destroyed a dam, and the resulting flood is what wiped out the city of Charleston. This is a galvanizing moment in the history of Appalachia. It galvanized the cruel and ruthless into the camp of raiders, caused many other raiders to take a step back and ask, what exactly have we become? We'll learn more about them in upcoming episodes, and caused others, like the Order of Mystery, to take the raider threat more seriously. This event, more than any other, caused Shannon Rivers to target raiders as enemies of the Order number 1. In the next one, March 5th, 2083, I've spent the winter surveying raider positions in the mountains and having the girls gather what intel they can from the responder radio network. It's bad. They have multiple bases, dozens of checkpoints and sniper posts, and they're growing. It's more than I can deal with on my own. As much as I hate to do it, we can't afford to wait any longer. It's time for the Mistresses of Mystery to take the field. On September 8th, 2084, for the most part, this week's missions have gone well. The exception, as usual, was Olivia. Her raid against the Garahan outpost was flawless, but rather than report back, she went on to clear 4 sniper nests, a half-dozen beast dens, and a derelict military bunker before finally returning 3 days late. And she dragged her initiate along for the ride. It was Rachel's first time in the field. Poor girl is still shaking. Her debrief was another shouting match. Nothing I say seems to get through to that girl. She's too headstrong, just like her mother. So Olivia was beginning to show signs of her rebellion even all the way back in 2084. And we learn here that Olivia was Rachel's mentor. Remember, in the note from Olivia, she said that Rachel was the one who first caught on to Olivia's betrayal. It was Rachel who then told Eve, and Olivia responded by killing them both. She killed her own initiate, the girl she was supposed to be a mentor to. February 8th, 2086. We found Clarissa's body last night. I always knew this day would come, but that doesn't make it any easier. These girls are my daughters. Every time I post a mission, I know one of them might not come back. But we have to press on. The raiders are gaining strength. If we don't keep them in check, who will? That's what I told them at the funeral. I gave them 2 days off. That's all we can afford. February 14th, 2086. Things have been tense since Clarissa's death. Some of the girls have started to question our methods. Should we announce ourselves, make contact with the responders of the Brotherhood, try to forge an alliance? Absolutely not. The Mistress of Mystery's greatest strength has always been the element of surprise. A lone woman can do anything, because no one expects her to be a threat. If we were exposed, if the raiders knew we existed, they would fight back. They can't fight a shadow. As bull-headed as this initially sounds, Shannon Rivers here is proven to be right. It wasn't until the raiders learned of their existence by getting the data from Kryptos that they began to no longer fear the Order. We read in many of the notes at Pleasant Valley in our last episode that they were indignant that all this time they had been killed by a bunch of girls. And it was only after the raiders knew that these assassins were of flesh and blood that they developed the courage, so to speak, to set up ambushes, as in the case with Natasha Hunt. Part of me is tempted to think that Shannon Rivers was wrong here, that it would have been wiser to work with other groups that had the same goals, especially groups like the Responders. But she was right that the secrecy of her organization was the greatest shield that protected them. May 22nd, 2086. I've appointed Eve the new Mistress of Novices. I need someone dependable and organized to handle training and mission assignments when I'm out in the field. For the most part, it seems to have gone over well. For the most part. Olivia was furious. I have almost 30 girls in my charge now, and I have their safety to consider. If she thinks I'm going to favor her simply because she's my daughter, she needs to grow up. And here Olivia fully manifests her entitlement mentality. Even now her character is very raider-like. She's entitled to the promotion. She probably considers herself to be the headmistress's only legitimate daughter. And after everything she's had to put up with all these years, the missed birthdays, her mother working too much, she deserves the promotion. And now to be passed up in favor of one of these interlopers? One of these orphan girls who invaded my perfect little life at the manor? We begin to understand exactly how Olivia could have fallen. June 1st, 2086. Lucia reports that the campaign against the super mutants in Huntersville has ended. If things go well, the alliance between the Brotherhood and the Responders might actually be the beginning of a long-term security arrangement for the region. What an important piece of information. The Responders and the Brotherhood formed an alliance? This means that the Brotherhood in Appalachia, at least, is not quite as xenophobic as many of the Brotherhood chapters we find on the West Coast later in the history of this universe. The Mojave chapter, for example. And if the Responders were comfortable with this alliance, could it also mean that the Brotherhood had less objectionable beliefs and practices compared to, say, Arthur Maxon's Brotherhood from Boston? We'll have to explore the primary plot of the game to answer those questions a bit later. All of the patrols moving through the mountains have suppressed raider activity over the past few months. I've asked the girls to be more careful as well. No sense drawing any unwanted attention. The mission board has been relatively light, but Olivia has been taking far more than her share. She's rarely at home for more than a day or two at a time now. At first, I was glad she was becoming more dedicated to her work, but I'm starting to worry she's just using it as an excuse to avoid me. July 24th, 2086. We buried Allison today. After 3 years, hundreds of missions, only 2 of our sisters have fallen. With so much death and devastation all around us, that's an incredible testament to their skill and tenacity. Olivia was particularly shaken up. She was the one who found Allie's body, carried it all the way back from Summersville. She went right to her room after the funeral. Poor dear. Summersville. Wait a minute, this isn't the first time we've heard about Summersville. In yesterday's episode, Raider boss David Thorpe was hostile towards Brody, believing he was full of hot air, that he wouldn't deliver on his promises until Summersville. It was when Brody came back from Summersville that he finally had a notch on his belt, and it was then that David Thorpe began to take him seriously. Clearly, this must mean that Brody and his raiders were responsible for killing Allie. But at this point in the plot, Olivia hadn't given over Kryptos yet. So why was Brody successful? Here we learn that Olivia found Allie's body. Was she really shaken up because her adopted sister was dead? Or perhaps was the behavior her mother noticed in her daughter the behavior of someone who felt guilty? After all, she immediately went to her room and hid from the rest of her family. September 7th, 2086. For years, we outclassed the Raiders. Now, suddenly, they've found a way to turn the tables. Counting Allison, 7 girls have been killed in the past 3 months. Now Kaylee is missing too. I've ordered Eve to accelerate our training program and recorded holotapes to handle routine assignments and promotions. I hate to think of anyone getting promoted by holotape, but with all of our losses, I've been away so much it's beginning to become an issue. November 10th, 2086. 3 more girls are confirmed dead. Evelyn and Catherine are unaccounted for. Rachel barely escaped, and that's just in the past week. How are they doing this? It's like the Raiders have suddenly found a way to read our minds. They're lying in wait on almost every mission now. As of today, I'm only allowing the most senior mistresses out of the manor. Eve, Amy, Olivia, and myself. We can't risk losing anyone else. So besides Eve, Amy, Olivia, and Shannon, all other mistresses of mystery were here in the manor? A perfect target for the raiders who wanted to storm the manor, but Shannon didn't know her greatest enemy was so close to home. All of Olivia's remaining sisters were right here within arm's reach, easy to murder. If we count the 7 killed including Allie, then add Clarissa, the 3 killed are missing that month, and then the 3 killed are missing this last week, that's 14 of them dead or missing. We remember from earlier that Shannon had 30 girls here. That leaves 16 left here at the manor if Olivia is included in that count of 30. 17 if she's not. Did Olivia really single-handedly kill between 16 and 17 trained assassins? If true, she had to have done it from stealth, preventing any of them from having a chance to react. Olivia's murder of her own sisters is that rather anticlimactic event that David Thorpe was referring to in his message to Brody. At least he said she saved them the trouble of killing the Order themselves. And in the final one, November 18th, 2086. Olivia, dear, what have you done? I'm going out to meet her. If anyone finds this, if anyone is even still alive, please, don't try to follow me. The Order of Mysteries is finished. Take the skills you learned here, join the Responders, the Brotherhood, anyone. Find some way to survive. That's all that matters now. I loved you all. I'm so sorry. I think Shannon Rivers made mistakes, but I do think she tried to do what was right. I do think she genuinely loved the girls she adopted. And even though it seems obvious to us in retrospect, at that time, I don't think for a moment she ever suspected the treachery of her own daughter. Because she loved her adopted daughters, so much so that she refused to play favorites, promoting Eve over her flesh and blood because Eve deserved it more. Had she known or even suspected Olivia, she would have never allowed Olivia access to the manor. She would have never left Olivia alone with all 16 of her adopted daughters. I think this came as a shock to her. I think she discovered only after it was too late. Backing out of personal journal, we can move on to active missions. When this terminal was last updated, Shannon Rivers was investigating a recent ambush. Olivia Rivers was on sentry duty here at Riverside Manor, a fox in the henhouse. Eve Devois was training. And as we suspected, the only mission still on the mission board that had not yet been accepted was the Pleasant Valley infiltration, the mission we completed ourselves in our last episode. Note, all non-essential missions have been suspended until further notice by order of the headmistress. In the next one, Cryptos access, we find the same access to Cryptos here as we do from the terminals outside. Backing out of her terminal, we can explore Shannon's office, we can loot some clipboards, pick a skill level 0 metal box on the floor by the window, and a skill level 3 locked wall safe by some of the filing cabinets. Now, Olivia told her mother that if she ever wanted to see her again, to meet her at their special place on her birthday. Where was their special place? But then we remember, there was one terminal in the manor that we didn't read because we didn't have access to it. It was locked and unhackable. It was Olivia Rivers' terminal in the burned wing of the manor. But now we have Olivia's login credentials. Heading up the stairs back to the manor, we can head upstairs and then move east down the hallway into the guest house. We see the upper floor completely burned away and fire damage on every wall. Olivia tried to raze this place right to the ground, but her terminal survived. We find it where we left it, on a desk in the northwestern corner of her ruined room. Logging in with Olivia's credentials, we can access her personal journal. Like her mother, Olivia was a journal writer. Data corruption detected. Out of 388 files in this directory, only 10 were recovered successfully. Please select an entry to view. Her first one was before the bombs dropped, September 30th, 2077. We're actually gonna miss the camping trip this year. I figured Mom was planning some kind of surprise, even if it was just for a weekend. We've been going to the same spot every year for as long as I can remember. It's always been our special place. Those trips were the one chance we had to just be together, where I didn't have to play the perfect daughter, the flawless student, where I could just be myself. I'm looking forward to college. I'm ready to get out of here. And with that, it all comes back to us. One of the first personal journals we read on Shannon Rivers' terminal in her study was how she had to cancel her annual trip with her daughter to Seneca Rocks. She was finishing up some of her work for the radio play. Huber's Comics was getting ready to shoot the Silver Shroud TV show, and she had to prepare. She just didn't have time for the annual camping trip with her daughter to Seneca Rocks. But canceling the trip hurt her daughter more than she ever expected. Olivia was too young to understand and hurt that this time alone with her mother didn't rank in order of importance before training for her new role. She internalized that pain, gnawed on it, and that pain turned to bitterness. She was ready to go to college to get away from Riverside Manor so that her mother couldn't ignore her and couldn't hurt her anymore. But she never got that opportunity. For a month later, the bombs dropped, and she never left for college. Instead, she stayed here at Riverside Manor with her parents for the rest of her life. In the next one, November 11th, 2078, well over a year later, The whole hero thing was cute for a while. Mother really is good at it, but it's gone to her head. Now she wants to adopt those rats she found rooting through her garbage and train them? I tried to argue with her. There are whole caravans of refugees on the road. We can't save everyone. Who do you help and who do you pass over? Why take in 3 strangers but then send the Torrance boy away? We barely made it through last winter as it was. We have to think of ourselves, too. The Torrance boy? The Torrance boy? Brody Torrance. Things are starting to make a bit more sense. Brody Torrance wasn't just some raider that Olivia took a liking to. Brody Torrance used to be a neighbor boy she likely played with as a child. A neighbor boy who, after the bombs dropped, was turned away by Shannon Rivers? And I suppose that does bring up a question. Why did Shannon and Frederick only adopt girls? Why did they not adopt orphan boys? I don't think they did anything evil. After all, they could have not adopted anyone at all, as most people did during the apocalypse. They mostly looked out for themselves. But why girls and not boys? Is it just because Shannon had more experience raising daughters? Because she had raised one previously? I doubt that Olivia had a soft spot for Brody, but when her parents rejected Brody but then took in all the orphan girls, that might have struck her as hypocrisy. This seeming hypocrisy clearly stood out to Olivia. Hypocrisy, which is one more argument she could use to justify betraying her mother. Many years later, on September 8th, 2084, this is insane. Every month, Mother slips further and further into this ridiculous delusion. We're an order now, a sisterhood, with ranks, titles, missions, a whole chain of command. God, we even have a mission statement. It was all right at first. Supply run, fine. Data collection, sure, I suppose. At least I got a chance to get out of the house. But that's not good enough. Not for her. Now I have to be her perfect, obedient little soldier, a role model for the rest of this brood. Take one step out of line, try to do something useful, and she chews me out. I'm sick of this. In the next one, February 10th, 2086. Clarissa is dead. Did she give her life for some grand heroic cause? No, just another pointless surveillance mission. This is all a farce. Mother made a grand speech about keeping the raiders in check, but it doesn't matter how many we kill. There will always be more. This is a world of raiders now. People take what they need to survive. What good is heroism on an empty stomach? Olivia, it's only a world of raiders now if you ignore all the other people who aren't raiders. Like the responders, like the Brotherhood, like the Free States, like the traders and the wanderers and the wastelanders and the scavvers, who are all trying to make a living without being raiders. It's only a world of raiders if all you see in your world are raiders. Yes, people need to survive, and when you're needy, you'll do what you need to survive. But as every faction we've come across in Appalachia so far have shown us and proven to us, plenty of people in this post-apocalyptic wasteland are able to survive without becoming a raider, without taking what they need. Dasa Ben-Ami learned this lesson firsthand. When we went to the Flatwoods Church, the responders caught her stealing food, and so they showed her another way to live, a way that involved making your own purified water and cooking up your own healthy food and crafting your own camp, producing your own food and wealth so that you can be useful to others. How can Olivia say that the Raider world is the only world when she knows, as a senior member of the Order, that there are many other thriving worlds around her who survive and survive well without being Raiders? I think she just wanted to choose this reality, and so she's ignoring all of the others around her to make her choice seem like the obvious one. Next, May 22nd, 2086. In the past 3 years, I've killed over 100 men. I've hit dozens of sites for supplies, intel, any scrap of useful materials. And for what? What good are all these shadow games? What people need is order. They need leadership. The responders are weak. The Brotherhood doesn't care for anyone but themselves. And the Order? We could do anything. We could rule Appalachia. Instead, we hide. We cower. No more. The Raiders may be hard, but they live in the real world, not this fantasy. What they do is real. It matters. It's time I came out of the shadows, and damn anyone who gets in my way. Next, June 8th, 2086. I found my opening. I've been taking checkpoint missions trying to scope out the raiders, and I recognized one. Brody, kid who used to live next door. I put on a show, took out his crew, nicked his leg, and then offered to talk. I tell him about the order. He tells me about the raiders. They're a mess, but that should make it easy to get in. We're gonna meet again next week in the old cottage at White Spring. Maybe we can come to an arrangement. I just don't get Olivia here. She complains about how the world needs order, and so she argues in favor of becoming raiders, but here she learns that the raiders are a complete mess. Where does order exist? In the order of mysteries. If order was what she wanted, how could she possibly be drawn to a bunch of filthy drug-dependent raiders? Next, July 5th, 2086. I've been meeting with Brody every couple of weeks. We've struck up a little relationship, for as long as it's useful. If we play this right, we both get what we want. His boss is dithering. I'm not some petty thug here to work your checkpoints. I have plans, so I've made him an offer. I sell out the order, and he gives me a blank check. Anything I want, no questions asked. I've given Brody the details for one of the missions on the board, a little supply run on Somersville. He and his men can set up an ambush. That ought to be enough proof for them. So Olivia was responsible for Somersville. But what was she thinking? Did she not know that it could possibly lead to the death of one of her sisters? In the next one, on July 24th, 2086. Allison. God, why did it have to be Allie? When I heard she'd drawn the Somerville mission, I knew I had to tail her. If she broke the ambush, Brody would be left empty-handed, or worse. One of the raiders jumped too early. She took two of them out, then turned on Brody. His gun jammed. I had to kill her myself. That's how she found Allison's body. That's why she carried Allison's body all the way from Somersville. And that's why after the funeral, she holed herself up in her room. She killed Allison, and even this late in her treachery, she still had some shred of remorse. On September 21st, 2086, 3 years ago, I was so excited by my first solo mission. It was a stupid little intel raid, but I took notes on everything I saw in Sugar Grove. That's how I found Project Siphon. It was a risk. There was every chance someone would see me, or the program would crash, or trip some security failsafe. But it worked. A full copy of Kryptos on one holotape. The raiders know every mission we're running for the next 2 months. They can pick and choose the targets they want. Even they can't screw that up. November 13th, 2086. One more week. One more week until this is over. It's been hard watching the other girls leave on their missions, knowing most of them won't come back. Catherine, Janet, Sarah. I don't hate them, but I need them out of the way. The raiders have set up a staging area in Somersville. When it's time, I'll slip away, signal Brody, and he can move in. They're calling in every man they've got. No one gets out alive. And then, once we're done here, I'll head up to Pleasant Valley and settle in. Give me a month, and I'll be running that hellhole. I don't know, she accused her own mother of being naive, but isn't this a bit naive? I mean, no one wants to be deposed, right? The entire reason Brody is doing this is so that he can ingratiate himself with David Thorpe, so that he can stay a lieutenant and have his cozy apartment at the lodge. And so David is handing out candy to both Brody and Olivia, because they're useful. They're getting rid of his enemies. But he doesn't want to be deposed. He knows what that's like. He deposed Margie. Olivia and Brody are useful now, but once the Order of Mysteries is gone, suddenly Olivia is no longer useful. Now, she's a threat. Isn't it a bit naive to think you can just waltz into a raider camp and within a month politically maneuver yourself to take the entire thing over? Arrogance depends on naivety, and we already know that Olivia has plenty of arrogance. That's the end of Olivia's terminal. And it didn't tell us where to go next. We only learned that their special meeting place was Seneca Rocks if we read her mother's diary entry in the study terminal back in the Manor. But we have. And so we can travel to Seneca Rocks to see if we can find any evidence of their meeting. Seneca Rocks is just north of the Pleasant Valley Ski Resort. If you fast travel to the ski resort, you'll find a nature trail behind the motel. This is the same motel where we found Brody's password in his duffel bag. If you take the nature trail north into the hills, you'll find other camping spots, including cooking stations, and then the trail will eventually wind back towards the ski lodge. But instead of following it, we can continue north into the rocks. We see one sharp rocky point. From here, we can take a gravel trail down to the western side of this rocky point until we reach a sheer cliff edge with large flat rocks on top. Taking them all the way west, we find a bit of a clearing. Clearly a pre-war camping spot here at Seneca Rocks, but peering over, we don't see anything. That is, until we creep to the very edge. Hopping down. We find the corpses of both Shannon Rivers and Olivia Rivers. And in death, Olivia has her arms wrapped around her mother's body. The ground is so covered in blood, we find an ankle-deep pool of it around their corpses. On Shannon's body, we find Headmistress Shannon Rivers' login and Shannon Rivers' recording.
Hello, Mother. Olivia? Why? Wake up. Look around you, Mother. This isn't one of your comic book fantasies. You're no hero. You're just a sad old woman who couldn't face the world. And you dragged all of us into your delusion. How many people have we killed? Hundreds? For what? Nothing changes. There will always be more raiders. Because they're right. There are no heroes. This is a world of villains. The strong survive. They rule. And Mother, I am the strongest. You made me the strongest. I'm done living in the shadows. I'm done playing my part in your little farce. I've made my choice. It's time I took my place in the real world.
You're worse than the raiders ever were. And far, far more dangerous. I'm sorry, Olivia. You've left me no choice. I'm so sorry, Olivia. I wish it hadn't come to this.
A hero to the end. Brody, you can come out now.
I've never seen anything like that. That's it then.
Yeah? She was the last. It's all over. Give me a hand, would ya? Let's get out of here.
Sorry. One last thing.
Brody, what?
Now it's over.
In the end, they were both betrayed. Shannon by her own daughter, and Olivia by the boy she felt pity for all those years ago when her mother turned him away at their doorstep. The same boy she showed mercy to, even if for her own benefit, when encountering him as a raider all those years later. While accusing her mother of naivety, it was ultimately her own naivety that got her killed, thinking that all you needed to survive in this wasteland was strength, and that the strongest will survive, without realizing that this world, like every world, is a world of relationships, politics, and cunning more than strength. Her naivety led her to believe that because she was the strongest, she could just walk into the raider camp, make demands of the existing boss, and in a month, she'll be running the place. Her naivety led her to completely overlook the ambition of the boy she thought she was using. The idea that he was using her never crossed her mind. But betraying Olivia was Brody's plan all along, and David knew it. The final entry on Brody's terminal is a message from David saying, "Go meet your girl, make sure there aren't any loose ends." She thought she could demand the world from David because she was so tough. But there is no honor among thieves or raiders. David never intended to give her a blank check like she thought. I bet when Brody returned to Pleasant Valley after murdering Olivia, he and David simply laughed at her naivety. But we can take comfort that they didn't laugh long, for there was a threat in Appalachia greater than the Order or the Raiders, which is why we find what is likely the corpse of Brody Torrance himself sitting in a chair on the balcony attached to his room. Maybe we can hope that before she died, she finally realized her mistakes and finally regretted them. After all, the last thing she did while dying from the fatal gunshot wound Brody inflicted upon her was wrap her arms around her dead mother, the woman who bore her, the woman she killed. Perhaps this was her way of saying, "You were right, Mother. I'm so sorry." On the body of Shannon Rivers is the Eye of Ra. The Eye of Ra is a unique apparel item, acting as a trinket, kind of like a wedding ring. The Fallout 76 official strategy guide says that the Eye of Ra enhances the Mistress of Mysteries regalia. Presumably this makes our attacks stronger. Fine little gadget. Honestly, I think this entire outfit probably looks a lot better on a female vault dweller, but on a male it looks, I don't know, really kind of goofy. But now that we have Shannon Rivers' holotape, we can head back to Riverside Manor to complete the quest. To complete the quest, we need to become a Mistress of Mystery, and the only one who can promote us to that rank is Shannon Rivers herself. Heading back to Kryptos with her holotape in our inventory, we can now log in as Head Mistress Shannon Rivers. Scrolling down to Administrative Actions, we can authorize a promotion to Mistress of Mystery. Then, we can select our own user account, Unknown. You have now earned the title of Mistress of Mystery. As a mistress, you are now a full member of the Order. You will be expected to uphold the name and virtues of the Mistress of Mystery and serve as a mentor and role model for the younger sisters. Dispensing Mistress rank holotape done, please listen to the Mistress's holotape. To get the holotape, we do have to press continue here, and we receive Order of Mysteries rank Mistress added. We also unlock 3 new Mistress of Mystery themed photo frames that we can use in photo mode to further enhance selfies in our regalia. With that, we complete the Mistress of Mystery questline, but we can still open the holotape in our Pip-Boy.
If you're listening to this, you are now a full member of our order, a Mistress of Mystery. Congratulations, dear. Since I'm not telling you this in person, I suppose it also means that I have passed. As I record this, I'm in my 60s. No one lasts forever, especially given what we do. For most of my life, I was an actress. I never would have imagined any of this. But after the war, there were so many orphaned girls. They needed a home. They needed something to aspire to. They needed hope. All I had to offer them was a comic book hero. But maybe that was enough. I'm sure Eve or Olivia or whoever follows them as headmistress has trained you well. You have her and your mentor and your sisters to lean on. And whatever happens to this world, you have the skills to face it. Do your best, dear. I know you will.
Olivia's treachery and her ultimate worldview came about originally out of longing to be with her mother. And when she didn't get the attention from her mother that she wanted, that desire turned into bitterness. And when her mother adopted orphans, she became jealous. And despite mocking her mother's order, talking about the pointless ranks, she became jealous yet again when one of her adopted sisters was promoted above her. I think Shannon Rivers is partly to blame. She did work too much before the war, and while adults can understand why work sometimes needs to be put above leisure, a child can't. Olivia took it as personal betrayal, to be told she was going on a camping trip to Seneca Rocks and then told that she wasn't. I think it led to her excusing her eventual betrayal of her mother. I'm also not entirely comfortable with the idea of adopting all of these girls and then bringing them into the Order. That step in this process wasn't fully explained. Does every adopted orphan girl become a Mistress of Mystery, or do some choose to leave the Manor and go off to become a scaver? What happens if they come back to the Manor to see their adopted family? What happens if they become raiders and the Order finds them guarding a raider checkpoint? What happens if one of the sisters becomes a Mistress of Mystery and then decides much later that it's not the life for her? Can you leave once you become a member? And what happens if you disagree with the headmistress? We never really saw much of that happen. Exactly how much pull did each member of this Order of Equals have? Reading phrases like, by order of the headmistress, leads me to believe that this Order of Equals wasn't as equal as one would think, that Shannon Rivers, for all her good, ultimately got her way. I don't like the idea of taking these girls whom you're supposed to be adopting and turning them basically into employees. If you're gonna adopt a child, you become the parent of that child, not the boss of that child. And there is a difference that I don't know if Shannon really understood. And while I understand the need for Shannon Rivers to keep the existence of the Order such a secret, I do think that secrecy, that isolation, was both a blessing and a curse. Yes, while they were a secret, it kept them safe from harm, but secrets are hard to keep forever, and we're talking about the long-term health of an organization. I think it would have been wiser for Shannon Rivers to find some way, even a secretive way, to communicate and work with some of the other factions in Appalachia. For example, if the Mistresses of Mystery communicated with and worked with the responders on a frequent basis, it's possible one of the responders might have noticed Olivia's behavior early, caught on to some of the red flags, and as someone outside the organization would have been less blinded to the fact that Olivia was Shannon Rivers' daughter, and might have been able to warn the Order of Mystery before it was too late. A wise man listens to the counsel of his advisors, but Shannon Rivers didn't really have any advisors. She was the headmistress. She made the decision. That proved to not be enough. In the council recording we listened to, Shannon Rivers didn't know what to do. If by that time she had forged relationships with the Brotherhood, the Free States, or the Responders, having offered them assistance in the past, perhaps they could have been the ones to suggest treachery, which seems to have never crossed their minds despite all the evidence. That said, it's undeniable that she did these girls a world of good, saving so many of them from eventually living lives as raiders or dying young. And despite my questions about her leadership style and the way the Order made decisions, they stomped out raiders and dominated them for years. And any organization that does that is okay in my book. But there's one question I have that was never answered. What ever happened to Frederick Rivers? He just disappeared from the story. The last we hear from him is a holotape recording between himself and his wife Shannon. And in that recording, Shannon comes to him for help with Olivia, and Frederick refuses to intervene. He says,
"Dear, I love you both. I can't get in the middle of this. The two of you need to talk this out."
and I think that was a mistake. I think what this little family triangle needed was a mediating factor like Frederick, who could come in and love both Shannon and Olivia, and not necessarily take sides, but provide Olivia with strong parental instruction, accompanied with understanding. To give Shannon support and compassion, while also buffing out her rough edges, to convince the two women in his life that he loves most to stop seeing each other as obstacles, but instead seeing each other as partners trying to overcome problems together. But instead, he just backed away and left them to deal with their own problem. And I think that was a mistake. But what happened to Frederick? Did he die in the fire that Olivia set? Or did Olivia murder him too, like she murdered all of her sisters? Ultimately, we don't know. Frederick just disappeared from the story completely. But maybe we'll hear from him somewhere else another day. Still, the only one responsible for Olivia's actions is herself. Yes, she was manipulated by Brody and the Raiders, but ultimately she was a spoiled, arrogant person who thought everyone was beneath her, who thought she knew best even more than her mother, and used the perceived slights that she had received from her mother and the apocalypse both as excuses to justify murder and treachery. I think a lesson we can pull from this is that despite what we do, despite what we say, some people, even people we love, will continue to make the wrong decision, will continue to be self-destructive. and maybe even destructive towards others. There comes a point when them being family just isn't enough, and the best response, indeed the only response, is to cut them out of your lives. Had Shannon Rivers cut off Olivia from their lives, the Order of Mysteries would have survived. That is the full story of the Order of Mysteries, the covert faction that could have been. What are your thoughts on this tragic but fascinating story? Do you use the Blade of Bastet or the Voice of Set in everyday combat? Are you going to do a Mistress of Mystery playthrough? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish many videos and host live streams each and every week on this channel, so if you don't want to miss my content, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I have my schedule posted on the cover art of my channel, and I make all updates to my daily schedule on Twitter, so feel free to follow me at Oxhorn. I have a brand new shirt in the shop. Graduate of Oxhorn's driving school. That's right, fans of my LA Noire series will be longtime admirers of my driving skill in that game, and you can celebrate my skilled hands behind the wheel with this brand new shirt. The shirt comes in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can also find it on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, stickers, mugs, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon this week with more brand new videos.